Hello all. So in this video, we're going to cover how to maneuver around in the virtual machines for OSUIT's creative group. I left the last video off in how to install the VMware Horizons software client. So if you've not done that, you need to watch the first video first and then jump back to this one. So I'm going to go ahead and log on to our servers, just like I did in the last video. And I'm going to go ahead and jump into the OKM Creative virtual machine. So this is interesting that this happened. So let's talk about that first. Once you have this set up, the virtual space, which is what we're looking at here, remember this isn't the desktop on your own computer. This is running off of a server right now. This virtual space can read what USB tools are plugged into your computer. So in this case, I have a USB camera plugged into my computer, and I've set this up to recognize all USB products on my computer. The main one that I'm really concerned with in that case are things like my mouse. You might have a gaming mouse that doesn't read as a normal pointer mouse, so you'd want to be able to use that. The camera itself probably isn't that useful, but it does point out the point that it's reading the USB devices on my computer. So in this case, I could actually install my camera. I've done that before. I don't find it particularly useful, but I could. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of that. But things like your Wacom tablet or maybe an advanced mouse or keyboard, you would want to be read by the virtual machine so that you could use them. Okay, well, we're in the virtual machine space, so let's drive around here and point out some things that you're going to want to care about. I'm going to start up here with this menu. So we're going to go from right to left in this case, a little backwards. But the Send Control Alt Delete, this button is in case the virtual desktop was to lock up or you wanted to exit and you can't figure out a way to exit. Or maybe you just get confused with the whole desktop thing and you can't figure out if you're looking at your own desktop or the virtual desktop. So if you were to click on this, it's going to go to the usual task manager in Windows. And again, I'm using Windows for this. I would click on task manager. I would find the process in here and then exit out of it. So I would find the VMware Horizon and just exit out of that. If I left that open for a little bit, it'd actually load what's running. All right, the next thing we're going to look at is the Connect USB device. This one gives you a few more options. So I would recommend that when you first run the VMware client that you click on Automatically Connect at Startup. And what that's going to do is save this setting to your VMware Horizon client on your machine that says every time you start this up, it's going to search your computer, your own home computer, for any USB devices that are plugged into it. Things like external hard drives are extremely helpful that they be recognized because you're probably going to be saving to them. I mentioned mice, keyboard, Wacom tablets are something that are probably going to be important. You can see here, it's recognized all of my items. Here's that webcam that I mentioned. Hard drives, I believe, are in gray because they're shared. So if your hard drives are not in gray and are in bolded, I'll show you how to fix that. Once I've changed it, I'm not quite sure what I changed, but I believe the hard drives will be in gray once they're shared. You can also click this Automatically Connect when inserted, but chances are you're going to have to unplug your USB device and plug it back in. I don't know that that's what you want to do. You could also click that one as well. So you can click both of them. So if you happen to plug your Wacom tablet in after you start everything up, you would click this button. But this is how the software reads what's plugged into your machine at home, your computer. We'll go over to options. And in options, I have clicked allow display scaling here. I don't know if that's necessary. I think that has to do with the size of your monitors. So if you're noticing that your monitors are distorted or squished, you might click that button. Um, I didn't really notice a difference when I clicked it or not, but I do want display scaling active, so it's not hurting anything. And here again is that send Control Alt Delete. So if you want to access it from here, you can. Down below is disconnect. It pretty much just disconnects you from this virtual machine. So you might want to disconnect to connect to another virtual machine, or maybe you want to jump over to OSU's SAS folders for something. You could go here, or disconnect and log off. If you disconnect and log off, it's essentially just shutting off everything. These two, you will lose your work if you've saved your work to the desktop, the virtual machine desktop. So if your work is shown right there, and that's a Maya file that you just were working on, and you're saving to the desktop on a virtual machine because you're used to saving to a desktop on every other computer you use, you're going to lose your work. And that's going to suck. So if you're looking over here and you see your files on this virtual desktop and you disconnect and log off, you're going to lose your work because the server has to wipe every virtual machine clean once you log off, because the next student's going to check it out. And you don't want your work sitting here when the next student checks it out. So it's kind of like you're saying you're done, you're handing off the machine, you've saved all your work to a drive you have access to. You've either saved to your local machine or a local external drive. I'm assuming those are the two ways you would do it. Going up a little bit here, you could share folders. So if you'd like to share folders with, I believe, with other people, you can do that with other virtual machines. I would not click enable relative mouse. I've not tested this out completely, but if I were to click relative mouse, it makes it so I can no longer access this menu. And I don't exactly know what it's relative to, but I would say don't click that, because every time I've done that, I've had to Control Alt Delete out of the desktop and come back in. You can auto connect to this desktop. However, it's not really how we have it set up. That's a nice feature, and maybe in the future we might use it. But what that's saying is that you, student A, has their own desktop that will always be there for you. This is more common in workplaces where like one worker would have their own desktop. So I don't think you're going to use this. And if you did, I don't think it's going to do you much good. You can switch to another desktop. So this is if you wanted to switch to that OSU SAS folder, for instance. If you do this, this desktop does stay open. It stays open in the background. However, it's only going to stay open for a limited time, I believe 15 minutes, and then it's going to close due to inactivity, and you're going to lose your work. So again, use that one carefully. These up here don't really matter. So that's about all there is to the actual desktop. Now let's talk a little bit more about how you would access the software here. Pretty simple. So this is just a regular computer. It's acting like a regular computer for all your needs for what we're trying to do. You can think of it as a computer, but it is not your computer at home. And it's not software that's saving necessarily to your computer. It's running off a server in a far off land somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll just open ZBrush as just an example. You would just click on it like a regular desktop. How long it takes to open is, again, kind of dependent on internet connection, what kind of machine you're running it on. I just picked ZBrush because it's one of the slower opening programs, and you can see that it opens pretty quickly. A little bit slower than what I might have at home, but not a whole lot slower. It's still loading there. And once it's done, I can exit out of this entry screen. Here is ZBrush. And if I was to double click on one of these and open a file, these are the generic ZBrush files. I can come in here and paint on it. As I'm using this and making this video, our Wacom tablets drivers are not on the VM server. So I'm using a mouse right now. Your Wacom tablets can be used if you install the Wacom drivers, but they can only be used as a mouse. The pressure sensitive piece isn't going to work until we install the drivers on the VM. So maybe by the time you see this, that'll be done. It's getting done as I make this, but right now, not done. And you can see it's not jumping around. Now, my computer here at home is a pretty good computer. I have pretty good internet access. It's not by far the best, but you can see that's running pretty seamlessly. So I'm going to, oh, and when you exit out of a software, this button exits you out of the VMware client. This button, in most cases, top upper right, the X, exits you out of the software. All your normal key commands should work as you're used to using them. You can actually go into the actual files of this computer. However, anything you save to this virtual desktop, whether it's to the actual desktop or it's to the drives of the virtual server machine, you're going to lose them. You're not going to have access to them. So you always want to save to an external hard drive. With that said, that's what we're going to cover in the next video. So for this one, we're going to wrap it up, and that should show you how to maneuver around in the VM Workspace.